when my foreman called me at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night to tell me my daughter-in-law was breaking into my warehouse with a locksmith. He expected me to panic. Instead, I took a slow sip of coffee and told him to let her pull the trigger. I had been laying this trap for 3 months, and tonight was the night she was going to ruin her own life. If you're riding along tonight, drop your thoughts in the comments. My name is Arthur Vance, I'm 67 years old, and for 42 years I ran Vance Precision Mechanics on the East Docks. People see my greasy knuckles and faded jacket and think I'm just an old man. They don't realize that building a business teaches you everything about people. You learn fast who stands by you and who is waiting to hollow you out. My phone buzzed against the wooden kitchen counter. It was Marcus Reed, my head supervisor who's been loyal for nearly 20 years. "Arthur, we got a problem," Marcus whispered, his voice tight. "Chloe is standing outside the North. Annex with a locksmith and a flatbed trailer. Is my son Leo with her?" I asked quietly. "No, just her, the lock guy, and 2 drivers," Marcus replied. "She's waving around a stamped folder claiming legal authority." "Let her in." "Marcus," I said, looking at a photo of my late wife, Martha. "Don't call the police, pull your crew back, and let her walk right to that door." Marcus went dead silent, convinced I had lost my mind. "Arthur, are you sure? She looks ready to strip the place clean." "I'm sure," I said calmly. "Tonight she finds out what happens when you mistake my patience for weakness. To understand how she ended up there, you have to go back 3 months. My son Leo is 33, a good-hearted man who always sees the best in people. 18 months ago, Leo married Chloe, an influencer with 0 savings. She never had money before Leo, but suddenly she had opinions about our business. The first red flag happened at dinner when she set her wine glass down hard. "Arthur?" she said with a camera-ready smile. I drove past the harbor and noticed that North Annex building, behind the dock. It's always locked. So what do you actually keep inside? Inside my head, every alarm bell started ringing at once. I chewed my food slowly, keeping my face calm. "Old equipment shed," I said softly. "Nothing inside but spare parts. Just seems like a lot of waterfront land for a junk closet," she replied. "I know developers who would pay millions for that exact lot." Leo grinned, completely blind to the hunger behind her eyes. My gut, trained by 40 years of work, told me something was wrong. The next morning, they showed up at my house with a leather folder. It had tax estimates and a red circle drawn around my building. "You're bleeding money on that shed, Arthur," Chloe said with fake concern. "I have contacts ready to buy it today with 0 hassle." Leo nodded along, like she was reading scripture. I flipped through her paperwork, letting her think it was working. Public tax records don't tell you a single true thing about what's inside. "I never sign documents the same day," I said. "Give me a week." Her jaw clenched tight, revealing the first real crack in her mask. As I walked them out, her eyes drifted to my hallway closet lock. She stared at my filing cabinet for 2 seconds too long. I knew if I accused her right then, Leo would defend her completely. I had to let her think she was winning while setting her trap. I called Marcus and told him to pull old lease papers for the shed. "Make it look like a plain storage building," I instructed him. 2 weeks passed while I dodged her constant phone calls. The real crisis broke on Tuesday outside Leo's tackle shop. I walked up and saw a tow truck hooked to Leo's delivery van. Leo stood on the sidewalk, pale as a sheet. "Dad, they say we missed 3 vehicle payments," Leo stammered. "That's impossible, because Chloe manages the store. Accounts." The tow driver shrugged and handed over a repossession order. Suddenly, Chloe screeched into the lot, her mascara smudged. She paced in tight circles, shouting about a banking error. 10 minutes later, she paid off the debt to drop the van. Leo hugged her in relief, but over his shoulder, her mask slipped. What I saw on her face wasn't embarrassment. It was pure terror. Successful consultants don't have vans seized over a glitch. She was drowning in debt, bleeding Leo dry, and hunting for a payout. When they showed up at my house with bags claiming a pipe burst, I let them in. I gave them the guest room because I needed to keep her close. At 2 in the morning, the hallway floorboard groaned outside my room. Through my study door, I saw Chloe kneeling in front of my filing cabinet. She was using a thin metal wire trying to force the lock open. She wasn't a professional thief, just a desperate woman running out of time. I flipped the hallway light on, catching her completely off guard. "Chloe, what are you doing down here in the dark?" I asked softly. She jumped, hiding the wire behind her back with a nervous laugh. "I couldn't sleep," she stammered. "Looking for water, got turned around." "Kitchen is the other way," I said, watching her hurry back upstairs. When I checked the lock, my property folder was sticking out slightly. She was hunting specifically for ownership records and storage codes. The next morning, I hired a private investigator friend named Frank. 3 days later, Frank met me at a quiet diner with a thick file. "You were right about her, Arthur," Frank said, shaking his head. "Her online business is totally fake, and she is drowned in debt. She lost everything in an online trading scam 2 years ago. When the banks cut her off, she took money from private loan sharks. She currently owes nearly $200,000 to bad people, and she's been quietly draining Leo's business account for months." My chest tightened as I listened to the truth about my daughter-in-law. She was putting my son's future at risk to cover her own lies. If I called the police now, Leo would just defend her again. I had to let her expose herself completely so Leo could see the truth. I had Marcus create a fake manifest for high-end marine electronics. We valued the inventory at $400,000 on paper. I placed the fake document inside the same drawer she tried to open. Then I hid 3 small cameras disguised as smoke detectors in my study. That midnight, I watched my phone screen as she picked the lock again. She took photos of the fake inventory with shaking, greedy hands. She fell for the bait completely, without questioning a single thing. The next morning, I slipped a tiny listening bug into the lining of her purse. Sitting in my truck 2 blocks away, I picked up her frantic phone call. "Listen to me," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. "I found something huge, way bigger than the shop money. There's a warehouse full of unlisted marine electronics. $400,000 in cash value, completely unmonitored." A cold, heavy voice replied on the other end of the line. "You owe 200 grand. Is this real or another lie?" "It's real," Chloe insisted. "I saw the paperwork with my own eyes. Send your crew tonight. I'll get you inside through the side gate." "What about your husband?" the loan shark asked. "He'll never figure it out," she said coldly. "Let him think it was a random break-in. I'm leaving him anyway." Sitting in my truck, my heart went cold and completely still. She wasn't just stealing. She was ready to ruin my son's life without care. Any small mercy I had left for her vanished right then and there. What Chloe didn't know was the real secret behind the North, Annex. It hadn't held spare engine parts. For over 5 years, the Regional Maritime Authority leased the property from me as a staging site. It was a high-security facility used by federal drug task forces. Inside, it was loaded with silent motion sensors tied directly to federal agents. Armed officers monitored the property around the clock. I gave her a few days to set her plans while I prepared my son. The night before the break-in, I took Leo out near the harbor. I opened my laptop and showed him the hidden camera footage. I played the phone recordings of her planning to abandon him completely. Leo stared at the screen, his face draining of all color. "Dad, she said she loved me," Leo whispered, his voice cracking. "I know, son," I said softly. But greed always reveals a person's true face. He sat in total silence as the reality of her betrayal crushed him. At 10:15, headlights swept across the North Annex lot. A black van pulled up and 3 figures stepped into the darkness. Chloe was right behind them, holding heavy bolt cutters in her hands. She cut through the outer fence chain, smiling as the gate swung open. She punched in the door code she had memorized from my fake paperwork. The moment she and the 2 armed men stepped inside, floodlights blasted on. Blinding halogen lights illuminated the entire lot like high noon. A heavy federal siren tore through the quiet night air, echoing across the docks. Leo grabbed my arm so hard his knuckles turned completely white. Armed federal agents poured out from 3 hidden entry points, weapons raised. "Federal officers! On the ground! Drop your weapons now!" they bellowed. The 2 men with rifles dropped to their knees, pressed flat against the dirt. Chloe shrieked in horror, trying to run back toward the open gate. An agent grabbed her arm, forcing her down into the cold gravel. She screamed that it was a huge mistake, claiming she owned the property. The agent pulled her hands behind her back and secured her wrists with heavy zip ties. Leo didn't say a single word as we watched the scene on my laptop screen. He stared through the windshield, silent tears streaming down his face. It was the painful, quiet weeping of a man whose heart had broken in half. I put my hand on his shoulder as I started the truck's engine. "Let's go home, son," I said gently. "It's finally over." He didn't shed. Another tear the whole drive. Back to the house. 3 days later, my kitchen phone rang with an automated collect call. It was a recorded message from the county detention center. Leo answered it, putting the call on speaker so I could hear. Chloe's voice came through high, frantic, and filled with fake panic. "Leo, baby, please help me," she sobbed into the receiver. "I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. I was set up. You have to wire bail right now. None of this is what it looks like." Leo stood still, his jaw setting into a tight, hard line. Something inside him changed completely in that quiet second. "I heard the recording, Chloe," Leo said, his voice flat and cold. "I watched you tell a loan shark that I would never know it was you." "Leo." "Wait, let me explain," she screamed through the phone. Leo pressed the end button, cutting her off mid-sentence. He blocked the jail's number and set the phone down on the counter. He looked at me with clear, steady eyes for the first time in months. When federal charges were formally filed, Chloe's greed finally caught up with her. She and her hired crew faced heavy federal conspiracy and weapons charges. The judge denied her bail completely, citing the clear video evidence. No lawyer in the city could save her from what 3 agents recorded. Leo filed for divorce that same week, wiping his hands clean of her. Without Chloe secretly draining his account, Leo's shop thrived again. He poured his energy back into his work, slowly recovering his spirit. 6 weeks later, I sat my son down at our old wooden kitchen table. I slid a small brass key across the table toward his shaking hands. He picked it up, looking at me with a confused expression on his face. "What is this for, Dad?" Leo asked softly, turning the key over. "A mechanic learns early never to put his real treasure in plain sight. 3 years before your mother passed, we set up a trust for you. It was registered in your name alone, completely hidden from outsiders. Chloe spent months hunting for a fortune inside a rusted warehouse. She never suspected that your true inheritance was sitting untouchable. She lost everything because she thought an old man was easy to fool." Leo stared at the key in his palm, his eyes welling up with tears. He stood up and wrapped his arms around me in a tight, emotional hug. He held on to me tightly, just like he used to when he was a boy. That Sunday evening, I sat on the harbor dock with a glass of bourbon. I watched the last golden light of the sunset fade over the water. I raised my glass high toward the sky and spoke softly to Martha. "I kept my promise, Martha," I whispered into the cool evening breeze. "Greed will always reveal its ugly face if you are patient enough to wait. You can build a flashy life on lies, but the foundation will crumble. What truly protects a family isn't money sitting in a warehouse. It's the honest work you put in every day when nobody is watching. And it's the sacred promises you keep long after someone is gone." Thank you so much for watching another powerful story on the Revenge Hub. If you enjoyed seeing justice served tonight, please hit the like button. Be sure to subscribe and share this video with your friends and family. Don't forget to check out our channel, The Revenge Hub, for more videos.